Welcome to Marvel Vision, a podcast about Marvel, the MCU, and right now, Captain America Civil War. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And as mentioned, we are going all the way back to Phase 3, I want to say, if I got my phases correct.
It is. Doesn't this kick off Phase 3?
I believe it does. Probably should have checked that before we're taping.
Sure, yeah. It sounds important if you're going to start with that, maybe look it up.
Yeah. Amazing. And we have a special guest this episode, so why don't we welcome her in, Rachel Leishman. She is a writer at the Mary Sue, and we're very excited to have you here. Yay, Rachel.
Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for coming.
Hello. So you are our external Marvel expert here. Obviously, we know about Marvel, but you said you wanted to talk about Civil War. You're excited to talk about Civil War. So before we get into it, and I'll mention here, spoiler warning, I assume anybody who's listening to this has probably checked out Civil War before. But if not, go watch it. It's on Disney Plus and it's regularly available a lot of different places. But Rachel, going all the way back, I was curious to start off. Give me your first impression of seeing Civil War. I assume you saw it in the theater, or where did you see it, or what was your reaction?
I saw it at the Williamsburg Theater in Brooklyn, which ended up being very weird because obviously a lot of people in Williamsburg are transplants. And so when Captain America in this movie is like, Brooklyn, all these people started cheering. And me and my friend were like, none of you are actually from here. Maybe like 5 of you are from actual Brooklyn. But
a lot of people in Williamsburg emerged from an ice block and moved into a tiny apartment together.
All those people came from Canarsie and were like, yeah, Canarsie, shout out to the MCU. But it was just like, that made me be like, what is going on in this theater? But it took me like, I don't know, probably like 3 or 4 years and my roommate telling me why I like Civil War for me to realize why this is my favorite Marvel movie. And it's because I'm a big Spider-Man nerd. I love Cap and I love Iron Man. And so like all of that, but like mostly Spider-Man showing up is the reason that I'm like, this rules, this movie rules. I have no notes. Any critical thinking that I could have about Civil War doesn't exist. And like it was from that first screening on, I was like, no, this movie rules. I don't know what people are talking about. I love Civil War.
That's
awesome. I was gonna say, is this movie the best Avengers movie?
You're coming in with a hot take right at the beginning, even before we talked about
we usually build up to this kind of talk.
Yep.
Yeah,
we got to get the people are tuning out right now. We got to hook them every 10-minute hook.
This young Justin is such a go-getter.
Justin shaved recently, and now he's
now only hot takes.
Justin.
Yeah, exactly.
Young Justin, that's right.
Only
hot takes, straight fire.
I cheer when people say Brooklyn and movie theaters because I'm from upstate New York, but I live here.
I think that's an interesting take, and certainly people referred to it as Avengers 2.5 when it came out. But to your point, I do think that holds up. I do constantly forget how much of an Avengers movie this is, at the same time as they do keep the through line of Captain America's journey of trying to save Bucky, of trying to connect with Bucky, following up on everything that happened in Winter Soldier. So it is an Avengers movie, but only in the sense that all the Avengers are there. I do think it still holds up as a Captain America movie at the same time.
Agreed.
Though, to contradict myself, there's also an argument to be made that it's an Iron Man movie instead. Like, it's kind of Iron Man 4 at the same time as it's Captain America 3.
I mean, wait a second. All right. She's saying it's a Spider-Man movie. You're saying it's an Iron Man movie.
No.
I'm 2 minutes away from saying it's a Black Panther movie. So this is going to be.
Thanks for teeing it up for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We're about
Spider-Man movie. To be clear, I'm just saying.
I'm just trying
Spider-Man shows.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're all right in a sense, because this movie, of all of the entire MCU, does everything at once and it doesn't feel overstuffed. I think this does it all in a way that it lands it all. And I don't think even movies now, like Multiverse of Madness, I think is doing way less, but it feels like too much. Well, this movie, it's like a ride the whole time. And it just, rewatching it, this movie crushes so hard.
It definitely has this big. Remind me, did I see this with you guys? I feel like we saw it in the theater together. Am I wrong about that?
We do
Williamsburg?
everything together. We're
right.
triplets.
Williamsburg?
We're conjoined
Yes,
It
triplets.
looks
Those at
like,
the
by the way,
Williamsburg
Rachel,
movie
to
theater.
establish, it looks like the three of us are in 3 different places, but we actually sleep in a triple bunk bed together.
Oh,
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
No, I think we
Watch
did see it
Walk.
together because I kind of
We did.
remember Pete being like, yeah, when Spider-Man came out, and yeah, when Black Panther came out, and like
Yeah.
nudging you, and you were checking your phone, Justin, as you were wanting to do.
Yeah, stop with that. I don't like this reputation. You're
Well, that's
building for
what
me.
your deal is. You do it. You're that guy.
Yeah. But it is one of those things like we're talking about that it truly is playing to an audience. It works to an audience. It has those moments. And getting back to the point that you made, Justin, yes, the Spider-Man moment, Underoos crushes, Black Panther showing for the first time crushes, but everybody gets those little moments throughout the movies that call back to a million different movies and work in that way. It's very much like everybody getting together and jamming on a concert together, as a movie. So there
Excuse
you
me,
go.
did you say jamming on a concert?
I don't know. I ran out of steam.
Ooh,
Right.
yeah,
So-
listen to this guy.
So are you a
Jam
music
on
teacher?
Yeah, exactly.
All I
You're gonna
know
be
is it has
touring with
been
the
almost
dad
2
now?
minutes now. So I'm going to turn it over to Pete because I'm curious to hear what his take on the movie is.
Well, first off, I mean, seeing Chadwick Boseman made me clutch my pearls like just every time he was on screen. And then kind of like oh shit, we got to watch his father died after he died. And this is, this is just so much and so emotional now. Especially the speech he kind of gives. It's really, it's kind of crazy to go back. Seeing it though for the first time, I was just so happy. I loved all the choices. Also, I really loved how Black Panther showed up, took off his helmet, was like, "I'm not solving this way. We're gonna have to talk this out," And it was.
Are you talking about at the end of the movie?
I am. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
When he took off his helmet.
Yes,
and
just
didn't
Rachel
fight.
to establish the 2 things Pete likes to talk about are the Marvel flip at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, we're
and
gonna spend
whatever
some
the last-
time. We're gonna spend some time on that.
Are we?
Yeah.
Do you want to just get it
He
out of the
said when
way?
he took his helmet off, and I was like, he does it like 3 times throughout the movie, so I was waiting to figure out
Yeah.
which part it was.
Yes.
All more dramatic than the rest. It's just
I do like the first, I will say, and nothing against anybody, please do not jump on me, Pete, but watching the movie again at this point, in the middle of the movie, when they have the big Black Panther fight scene, and it's the car chase in the middle of the movie when
Yeah.
they're chasing after Bucky, which is great. It's super fun. But at the end of that, they're like, who's this Black Panther guy? And he takes off his helmet, and they're like, there's this pause where you're supposed to realize, like, it was T'Challa the whole time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I think we kind of knew that.
how dare you? Don't take away that moment.
I think we figured that out.
He still gets the moment though. I mean, you
He
gotta
does get the moment, and it's fine, but it's
and
not.
it's earned and it's amazing.
Okay.
But yeah, let's go. You're right. Let's back up the truck and start about talk about the start of this thing. One of the great Marvel flips, so well timed with a tonal change, but also all comic books, no movie bullshit. I mean, that was pinnacle Marvel flip there. I mean, that was its peak before it kind of went downhill. I mean, that was the last used perfect Marvel flip.
Let me ask you a question, Rachel, and not to put you on the spot here, but something that we talk about a lot on the podcast is people being MCU fans versus comic fans or both. Where would you characterize yourself?
A mix, I guess, because
Mhm.
I grew up in a DC household because my brother didn't really get into Marvel, but I know more
interesting.
about Marvel. Like he liked Cap and Spider-Man, but then I know more about Marvel and Marvel comics than he does. So we kind
Ooh.
of balance each other. So like I'll call him with DC questions and he'll call me after like She-Hulk and be like, I have a question about that. And I was like, oh, that's this. So I'm like
Wow.
in between. So I know the comics, but I'm also a big MCU fan, primarily Spidey and Wanda. But yeah, so I'm more in the middle
All right.
than
Well, given that, then
on either
the
side.
transition from doing the Marvel flip from comic books to movies, was that a big controversial thing? Or is
Yeah,
Pete
did
a
you
crazy
notice
person?
it?
Alex,
Was it a big
Alex,
part
you
of your
don't,
life?
You don't have to do that. Just because Pete says it doesn't mean we have to talk about it. Because it's truly
I'm
insane.
just trying to get through to Pete any way I can here because It's fine. There's a whole cold open that happens before that, though, where they fight Crossbones, which is very cool and very
Mhm.
intense. And I think that's the part of the movie. It's interesting to me because I feel like the rest of the movie almost has its own tone in a certain way, but that beginning part is very much an extension of Winter Soldier. You got the spy stuff going on. Feels like the Russos. I should have mentioned, by the way, at the beginning, this movie came out May 6, 2016, directed by Anthony Russo and Joe Russo, written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, sort of the big team in the MCU at
Yeah.
this point, post Winter Soldier. And that part definitely has the feeling of like, okay, we're picking up on Winter Soldier. We got Crossbones now in almost his full comic armor coming in. People, even Scarlet Witch is kind of like learning spy stuff from Natasha in this scene, but it has
That
that.
opening moment with her though is my favorite, one of my favorite moments in all of the MCU because it was the first time I ever saw a woman have chipped nails in a movie, and I truly lost my mind just because I'm like so used to watching movies and it's like a superhero's hair is perfect
Yeah,
and she does
glammed
all
up.
this and she literally just has like messed up nails holding a cup, and I was like, I love her, I'll die for her, I do not care.
Wow,
Like
nice.
when I was like, I love Wanda, I don't care, she's a mess.
Well, let's jump
Well,
to that arc then, because she is the one that really kicks off a lot of this. I mean, there's certain points that escalate things over the course of the movie, but it really is Wanda, at least on the surface, messing up what happens on this Lagos mission by Crossbones has a bomb. She takes him, throws him up in the air to get him out of the way of the civilians, and accidentally throws him directly into a building. That kills a couple of Wakandan folks. It kills Lagos folks. It becomes a big deal that spins off into the Sokovia Accords. And then over the course of the movie, and I'm just mentioning for anybody who hasn't watched it in a while, she gets put under essentially house arrest by Tony Stark,
Right.
who has been approached by somebody, Alfred Woodard, actually, whose son was killed in Sokovia. He, in classic Iron Man fashion, takes it very personally and goes, I would argue, wildly out of control with what's going on. And this leads to a big conflict that ultimately brings Wanda. She's imprisoned by the end of the movie along with other people. So, since she is your fave, how'd you feel about this whole arc? How did that strike you, Rachel?
I mean, I like it because I don't necessarily think that Wanda should have come off of Age of Ultron as just like a gung ho member that everyone just trusted. So I like that it still showed that they don't fully trust her. And then set up a lot of like her own distrust within the Avengers later in the MCU. But I like the way that they set up a lot of her storyline where it is Cap trying to protect her, Iron Man thinking he's trying to protect her, and how her alliances lie within the Avengers come from how they react to her because she is just a kid in their eyes because most of the Avengers are in their 30s and 40s. And Wanda, I think, was canonically like 22 or something. I can't remember the exact age she's supposed to be. But I like her arc a lot in this movie because I think if she was just an Avenger and they were like, it's fine, don't worry about it, it would feel disingenuous to who the Avengers are because she was their villain. And then they basically adopted her and were like, come with us, we'll protect you. And I feel like that they did a good job with that arc in
Yeah.
this
I
movie.
I agree. I feel like they, especially considering this movie and the larger Wanda storyline in the MCU, they built her up from in Age of Ultron. She just sort of can push stuff around with her powers. Her powers evolve so much in this movie and then on, as well as her relationships from like you're saying, being this kid who like is like, do I want to do this? I'm learning espionage. Okay. Romance with the Vision, and then on into WandaVision, and obviously what comes after that. What so much happens without it feeling like predestined. It was a really organic evolution. I thought watching this again was so well done.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the Wanda stuff was really kind of a cool way to kind of explore like what her deal is. And you know, you're definitely right. She's referred to as a kid, I think, a couple times in the movie. But what's interesting to me was the turn she does on Vision, which, you know, because of WandaVision, you know, she makes all these sacrifices so they can have a relationship. And so to have her kind of like turn and then throw him, I believe it's like 50 levels down, like she just got pushing him, I think, to the center of the earth at some point there. But which I was a little kind of like, oh man, you want to talk about like Tony going too far. I felt like Scarlet didn't have to. That was rough to watch.
Well, I think she was sort of like, because he was being sort of controlling of her, and she sort of, I think there was a budding relationship there, but when he like is keeping her in prison, I think she was trying to say, you don't do that, buddy. And I
Oh
think
no,
it doesn't,
I know.
yeah,
And I think because she knows like he'll survive, she's like,
Yeah.
okay, bye. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think she would have done that to like Clint, who would be
No.
dead
Yeah.
within the first floor.
Yeah,
but-
second, two floors down, Clint's dead. Let's not
Yeah,
forget.
yeah.
Two
He's a
things that I-
two-floor. He's a two-floor. It was on his
Two-floor guy.
Marvel Masterworks card. It was like 2 floors will kill this.
Right,
man.
he had
2
like
floors
their little
will
two
kill you.
little bars.
Yeah,
there.
it was
Yep.
stamina, charisma. How many floors kill you?
Yeah, love those cards. The two things that I really like in that storyline, actually, and I agree with you guys, I think the Wanda stuff is great here, just taken isolated on its own. But we touched on this a little bit, but the Paprikash moment where Vision is trying to make Paprikash for her, it's just this very nice, calm scene in the middle of everything that also has a little bit of menace to it, because it ultimately is where it comes out that he's trying to keep her there on the orders of Tony Stark. But this is this little spark we've been waiting for between these characters, because we know from the comics that they are going to end up romantic. And like you were saying, Justin, they just build it both very quickly over the course of the MCU, but also slowly in a way as well. And in these little tiny moments that, like Pete was saying, a lot of it gets filled in later in WandaVision. And the other relationship that I think they follow very nicely here.
Before you get there, Alex, do you think Paprikash is like a really flirty dish?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that a great date
Yeah,
dish?
well, I know what's in it beyond paprika, and I'm
well, let me throw out. I'm looking at the recipe now, and it's mostly paprika. They're
Okay.
not. It's yeah.
I'll tell you what,
very
that sounds
paprika.
dusty to me. Then actually, that's sort of like a cinnamon
So,
challenge type thing.
It's a wet Rika. It's
Oh,
not.
okay. Oh, you wet the
wet.
paprika?
Yeah, but
That's the
I'm not
Kosh
reading.
part.
I'm not reading the recipe directly off the page. To be honest.
All right, I depend on you for this information. So
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Justin. The other relationship that I was going to mention, though, we talked about Hawkeye being there. I love this continuation of, like, in Age of Ultron, Hawkeye is the dude who is there for Wanda to give her the pump-up speech in the middle of the battle at Sokovia, and he's the guy that comes back to get her again here. And so, like we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, just these little things of, like, yeah, if you know, you know. If you've watched the series, you know. If you don't immediately pick up on that, cool, Hawkeye's here to save her, and that's fine, and it's a fun moment watching this fight going on. The one other
Hawkeye
thing,
really, before you move off Hawkeye, he really pops. This is one of the best. It's just enough Hawkeye.
It really is the perfect
much.
amount of Hawkeye. He shows up, he's sarcastic, he's like, what, I'm retired, everybody loses their minds. He's got a couple great zingers, you know, he's zaps Vision, you know. It was great to see him.
Great to see him, which I don't always say.
Yep.
He has a line, played 18, shot 18.
Shot 18?
I
I
can't
mean,
seem
come
to
on.
miss. This is fun. And there's a little exchange with Nat.
Yep.
In and out. That's all we want from Hawkeye.
Well, I will say it also, like, if you look at like his relationship with Wanda and then his future relationship with Kate, it does show the difference between like how he deals with younger Avengers and like training them and being their like mentor versus Tony, who's like, no, stop, go over there. And I love Tony and Spider-Man, but it is very much like, you don't do anything I don't tell you to do. Go sit over
Yeah.
there. And he's kind of that way with Wanda, but Wanda's like, I'm not going to listen to you. Versus Peter, who's like, I will do anything you've said. I will lay my life on the line if I have to. And it's really interesting how it is highlighted though through like Clint and Tony and how they interact with kids in the MCU.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's
Well, why don't we
Clint
get
as a dad.
I think this is a good
Yeah.
way of getting into the main thrust of the action here, and then we can go back and talk about the different bits and the characters and the things that pop up. But the big question is Team Cap or Team Iron Man? And Team Cap, of course, is the one who's like, no, we can't sign the Sokovia Accords. We got to do our own thing. We can't be at the beck and call of governments. And Iron Man is on the side of, we've screwed up a bunch of times, like very badly. And we do actually need oversight here. So what do you think? Which side do you fall on, particularly after this most recent rewatch? And with the world being the way it is, you know?
Oh, well, I don't know about
let's get into it.
Yeah,
I don't
if you
know
could
I
bring in like
consider-
current
the-
politics, that would be.
With
Yeah, when
the
you say the
world,
world-
it's Team Cap. But
Yeah.
this movie is like, I guess I can't remember how it was phrased, but it is like being an adult is realizing that they're both wrong, that it's like it's two extremes and no one is listening. But yeah, I was team, was I team Iron Man then Captain Iron Man? I'm Iron Man in the end, because if I found out someone killed my mom, it's game over. But so I was like, he's justified. Go ahead. Go off. But then I'm also like, he should probably be in jail for attempted murder. I'm complicated, but I go back and forth.
Good for you.
I go back and forth between both. So I'm just, again, firmly in the middle.
All right. No,
I'm curious.
fair.
I'm curious, Pete. What's your answer? Because Black Panther is
team Black Panther,
team Iron Man.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing, and you know, I've been in numerous heated discussions about this. My stance remains Team Cap. I'm not going to tell Captain America how to fight crime, and I trust him to do that job. So I'm not going to kind of like try to tell him where he can't go, and he's got to get okayed for a mission so he can go do stuff. I mean, is he a wild card? Sure. Did he go way above and beyond for Bucky? But you know, they have a history, so it's hard to do that. So yeah, I'm Team Cap all day every day.
So when they were fighting, when Black Panther and Cap were fighting, you were like, "Get him, Cap! Beat Black Panther."
Nope. No, how dare
but
you?
that's whose side you just said you were on. So you wanted Cap
I was talking about
that.
philosophy wise, like, you know, how I feel and
Well, what
I
about
stand.
physically though?
Physically,
You'd like to see Cap beat up Black Panther.
no, Black Panther wins.
Okay.
If that fight happens, Black Panther wins all day.
Yeah, when I watched the
because he
movie,
wouldn't have a shield because his shield is vibranium. So
Yeah.
he shouldn't have the shield anyway. But
that's fair.
Fair.
When I was in the theater watching this, I screamed out, "Philosophically, I'm with Cap, but like physically, I'm sort of in the middle with Black Panther." And like, I do think in
That's
different
why
fights,
seeing movies in theaters with other people are great. There's a lot
Absolutely.
of fun, go back and forth and yelling at the screen. You know, it's so fun.
Now, wait, Justin, where do you actually fall other than your team Justin against Pete?
yeah, I mean, always.
Always,
I mean, what I would say first is this movie does a great job of laying out both sides, and you feel sympathy for both sides. Like you were talking about how Iron Man goes too far, but I would argue it's all right there. Like the scene where we see his parents and young Tony at the beginning, which is a wild thing to put on stage in front of like 500 MIT students.
Yeah, right.
Very,
Exactly.
very
College
front
kids,
street,
that's
front
really-
street with your
yeah,
personal business. But it sets up this real damage he has about like let's not leave anyone behind. And if we make a mistake, we have to fix it because his parents, he lost his parents.
Of it all. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my sympathy is with Iron Man through a lot of this. He obviously goes too far, but I would argue Cap also goes way too far. A lot of people get hurt and killed because he's just like, I think this boy I used to know is still cool. Which is like being like, yeah, my high school friends, I vouch for them no matter how many people have jailed them. And that's a risky position.
He might have killed
especially-
this guy, but I'll destroy this airport to find out.
Yeah.
did my best friend kill JFK? Probably, but it's okay. 'cause that's
Yeah.
my best friend.
How
He
many
was
high
mind
school
control,
kids?
guys. Okay.
But
Come on. He's
you're hanging
mind
out.
controlled.
You're hanging out with your unseen vegan dream friend,
Right.
who you used to know. He's convicted of murder, and you're like, he's like, I was mind controlled, and Pete, you're like, got it, agree.
It sounds like something the dream would have happened to him.
Let's go to Siberia. We got to go
I mean,
right now.
he set my house on fire twice. So
Oh,
You
this
can't
is a
trust that
true
guy.
story, right? You switched it to a true story? Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, sorry, Rachel. Pete has a friend named the Unseen Vegan Dream, which is probably hard to pick up out of context.
I was
And then-
like, dream? Is this now it's Sandman? Where are we going?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff.
nice.
Call
Yeah,
up your
jump on.
brother. This is a DC question.
Yeah.
But I guess at the end of the day, I'm Team Cap. The movie is Team Cap. It's hard to be Team Iron Man because that's like rooting for control and oversight for me. So like, even though everyone's having fun for the most part, when Spider-Man enters the movie, it definitely wants you to be. It makes me want to be on Team Iron Man. But
Yeah, I'm kind of in that place as well. I think the separation is, if you think about it from a logistical, real world perspective, and this gets back to, I think
Boo.
with the, no, it's a no fun perspective. I'm very well aware of that. But going back to like the comic book, the thing that they discuss in the comic book that I don't think they bring up in the movie is the idea of like you'd register a gun, right? Like you want a gun to be registered. So if you have a person who is literally a gun, why wouldn't you want them to be registered? And I think at the end of the day, yes. So Team Iron Man, register everybody, have some sort of oversight for these people who are potentially living bombs. Of course you want to do that. But like Justin is saying, that just doesn't work in a superhero world. It doesn't work in the Marvel universe. It also doesn't work in the DC universe, having that sort of oversight. Cap is 100% right that they need to be able to do what they need to do. And that is proven time and time again in literally every single movie and TV show in the Marvel universe. So just take it in there. I don't think there's any debate about that, but we have the freedom of being the audience members who get to watch these adventures and take them in versus being a character in the movie. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it took us right out of it.
yeah, sorry about that. Again, my wah, wah, no fun
Yeah,
take.
old
Why don't we talk?
sober Zelbin bringing the buzz down.
Well, why don't we talk about some other characters here? We talked about Black Panther a little bit. Why don't we talk about Spider-Man and his introduction here? Because this was a big deal going back in the day. I'm sure most folks remember this, but it was not a done deal that they were going to be able to get Spider-Man in this
It
movie.
was huge.
It was huge. They had to work with Sony, figure out a co-production deal that, of course, led to the Spider-Man Tom Holland trilogy. But according to the Russos, at least, there was never an option from their end. Like they were going to barrel forward and try to figure out how to do this. Spider-Man was one of those things that are like, we got to have that in there. That's got to happen. There were a lot of other moving parts, like the Hulk was going to be in the movie at some point. Wasp was going to be in the movie at some point, coming off the end of Ant-Man. Nick Fury, they kind of like, apparently there was some confusion because they told Samuel Jackson he was going to be in the movie and that he wasn't, and he didn't know why. And then even they were going to turn William Hurt into Red Hulk at some point. So there were a lot of different characters they were throwing around. But Spider-Man was one of those immovable parts. Why do you think that was? And I think we've already established it works well, but I'll say anyway, why does Spider-Man work so well in this movie?
Well, first I wanted to back up the truck and talk about just the setup of how it was delivered in the movie, because it was such a cool moment where, you know, Tony and Natasha are talking and they're both like, I got an idea. And Natasha's like, where's your idea? You know, and, you know, and Tony says, Queens, and we get this huge Queens cut to, and the whole audience went nuts because all the nerds knew what that meant, and that meant Spider-Man, and it was just a bananas moment in the movie theater that even watching it, when you like you get that kind of cut to, it's such a cool moment.
I gotta
Well, you
be
saw the
honest.
movie, Pete. You saw the movie at the Uncle Ben in Memoriam Theater in Forest
Hell
Hills,
yeah,
Queens, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Rachel, you seem to be freaking out right now. Talk about this moment. And
Yeah, when
bringing
I
in
saw
Spider-Man a little bit.
Queens, I literally just put my hands in my face in my hands and smiled. But yeah, no, I mean, not to go back to hot takes, but my hot take is this movie gave me my perfect Spider-Man that I had been waiting for, because
Mhm.
Oh, nice.
Tobey Maguire is just nostalgic. He's not good when you go back and rewatch those movies. Sorry, he's 45 years old, but he looks
Yeah.
40 and is playing a teenager. I was just a kid and seeing Spider-Man, so I didn't care. And then Andrew Garfield is so good at like half of it. And I just wanted it to be the full thing. I wanted him to be good at all of it. And then Tom Holland, I watched that movie and was like, oh, wow, it's a kid and he's actually Spider-Man and he's trying to figure out what it is. And it starts with this movie, carries on through Homecoming, and just like all the way up through No Way Home. Like he is a kid for the first time in live action. And I really like the setup where he got a computer out of a dumpster and Tony is giving him shit for it and is like, where'd you get that? And he's like, I dove in the trash, so I don't have any money. And I like his dynamic with Marissa Tomei as a 90s kid who remembers the two of them used to date. So I was like, I'm into whatever nonsense they're trying to pull over here. And I like, there was just so many little things about this introduction that set the tone for the rest of the Tom Holland arc. which is not over, but I'm just saying that we have now seen, that it was just so good and I loved it so much. And Underoos only made it better, and then that whole little fight. But this first moment is just perfect.
Yeah, it's so good. And I had forgotten how much of the Spider-Man stuff is him fighting Captain America.
Yeah.
They have so many, and Spider-Man sort of wins for most of it, which just caught me off guard.
I feel like Cap was pulling his punches a little bit, you know.
Well, because
Yeah,
he was
Bucky
fighting like
wasn't,
a.
though.
Yeah, he said, no, I mean,
Yeah, no, it's not about that. Yeah, yeah.
Bucky wasn't, and Peter caught it.
Yeah.
Justin, I think you said earlier that this movie doesn't feel overstuffed, and I think this is obviously jumping ahead to the airport fight, which is like one of the pinnacles of the MCU. I think just in terms of
One of the
action
greatest
sequence.
fight scenes maybe ever.
Just the way that it's balanced there, that everybody gets their moment, that it weaves back and forth in a logical and geographical way. Particularly Spider-Man is the best example of that in terms of the way the fights build, first with Bucky and Falcon, which are this delightfully fun duo throughout the entire movie. Just pairing them together is great, and that obviously led to Captain America the Winter Soldier, the series on Disney Plus. But seeing Spider-Man fight them and then go over to Captain America, the moment where he does the, hey, I don't know if you've seen that, guys have seen that old Empire Strikes Back movie, and does the thing with Ant-Man to knock him down. All these jokes in the middle, it's so much fun while these stakes are so high, and that it doesn't turn into the Spider-Man show in that sequence, even though Spider-Man gets so many standout moments, is pretty amazing. Same thing going from the introduction forward. That should be the sort of thing that completely overwhelms the movie, the introduction of Spider-Man into the MCU. And it doesn't. It just feels like another element organically happening here. I'll throw out something to you, and I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this. Well, just to like finish up here, just last thing I was going to say is in terms of like the peak MCU-ness, this to me feels like peak Easter egg MCU, which isn't fair because it's way more than Easter eggs. But in terms of those moments of like, here you go, Marvel fans, this is everything you wanted. I don't know that there's anything past Civil War in the same way, just in terms of introductions of Spider-Man, Black Panther, all of these other elements where it gives you that same level of thrill in the theater of like, I can't believe we're seeing this the first time.
yeah.
I
agree.
would only argue that the one moment, because my brother, who I said wasn't really a Marvel fan, the thing that he still talks about is Worthy Cap. And that's the only
Yeah.
other one that is like people were waiting, because obviously Avengers Assemble, but like we knew eventually we would get Avengers Assemble, but Worthy Cap was the one that I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
was
when
the only
it's
other.
you think it's all over and just Cap there fighting an Avengers and they all come through the portal and then he's like on your left. I mean, that was just unbelievable.
I'm not saying there's not
Sorry.
great moments. I'm just
Is this from another movie? Is it? What are you guys talking about?
Yeah,
I've
but,
only,
I mean,
I've
he's
only
saying the
seen I've only
best
seen
ever.
up to this far in the Marvel
Okay, all right,
Cinematic
all right,
Universe
all right. Yeah,
because
that's
it
a
continues
good
on,
point.
right?
It's a good point.
yeah, there's
No,
a
this
couple
is
of
the
movies
last.
after this. Yeah, just a couple.
Oh, great! I'm looking forward to see how these storylines come together.
But I'm worried because you fast forwarded through like a lot of like really amazing bits and I mean, when they're all like lined up about to fight and they're talking about like, amazing who you run into the airport. That's all just amazing. And then the Falcon being like, there's usually not this much talking during a fight to Spider-Man, who's just kind of like going off about the flight pattern of Captain Shield and all this stuff. There's just, and then the whole kind of like Cap and Spider-Man, like, where are you from, kid? Queens. Brooklyn. Like, oh my God. Yeah, the Berg lost it at that point. So it's just one of those things where there's there's unbelievable, like, mind-melting action going on, but also the banter back and forth is peak Marvel as well, and it's just some of the best stuff. And even the who's holding back, who's going full out, like all that kind of stuff is just absolutely magical. And Ant-Man joining it and then becoming huge and everybody kind of losing their mind. I mean, that was just
Well, and the fact that
so
they're
much
able to
fun.
balance the tone of Ant-Man appearing and making Ant-Man and Spider-Man different enough that they're not sort of eating each other's lunch comedically, But then you have that moment, the Empire Strikes Back takedown moment, and then like truly minutes later, Rhodey dies maybe.
Oh,
Like in the moment where like that guy has died when he crashes to the ground. And you just see that shot of where the camera pushes on Tony holding Rhodey's body, and you're like, I can't believe I was laughing a minute ago. I feel guilty. And you're like, whoa, this movie is this movie is a ride.
Yeah, it sure is.
Rachel,
all I was gonna say is you brought up that Rhodey moment, which I like, yes, but also that was one of the moments where I was like, Tony, you shot the wrong person, because he like blasts Sam, and I'm like, Vision did it. It was literally Vision, and you're ignoring that because you're mad at them. I was like, listen, I love you, but this is messed up. Sam didn't do anything.
I do think that gets into what I was mentioning a little earlier in terms of Iron Man kind of wildly going out of control at points here. And granted, they're trying to create this arc of he's kind of the villain, but kind of not the villain because he's a hero that we followed through multiple movies. But I do think it gets back to it's a reaction from him to what he did in Age of Ultron. That Age of Ultron, he was like, I can protect the entire world. That fails as spectacularly as it possibly could, to the point that tons of people die, property is wrecked, the Avengers almost die, he almost dies, lots of stuff goes on. And here he goes in the exact opposite direction. He's like, nope, can't do anything. I got the thing out of my heart. I'm not a superhero anymore. Leave me alone. Everybody else needs to be like me. We just need to calm down and stop doing this. And because of that, we do get these moments like him shooting Sam and doing things that he's doubling down on in the wrong direction, that at times to me feels like they're calibrated a little too much, you know?
I hear you, because I think from a movie watcher point of view, you're like, that guy's a little out of control. But personally, you ever had, when you make a mistake and then you make another mistake right afterwards? I feel like
Double
your vision,
down.
like the other night I was cutting some vegetables and I cut like almost a piece of my finger off, and I was like, geez, and then I turned around and hit a pan of water, and then that spilled. I was like, I can't do anything right now. And I feel like that's that moment where the world sort of goes tunnel vision white, and you're like, I'm falling here. And that's what Tony is doing through this whole movie, to your point.
Well, and also when you think about it, he does still have PTSD. Like it was, I was like at some panel at New York Comic Con a couple years ago, and they were talking about mental health in superhero movies and how like it gets erased. And this guy brought up Iron Man 3, and I was like, it didn't get erased. If you look at Tony's actions from Iron Man 3 on, it's all very still there, and it's just within his own character. He just doesn't have his own movie to talk about these things, but he is very much still struggling in the way that he was in that movie. And I think looking at this movie through that lens, it just not justifies, but like it explains a lot of his thinking and his rationale, because he is still kind of struggling it with himself.
Well, and if you want to draw that line there, I think you could go all the way back. And again, they don't reference this, I think, at all really here. But the vision that Wanda gives him towards the beginning of Age of Ultron, where he sees the Avengers just laid out in space, absolutely destroyed, in that very classic comic book cover, everybody's laying on the ground, very posed sort of thing. That is something that spurs him on to create Ultron. But to your point, Rachel, I think that's something that spurs him on continually because that hasn't happened yet. That's looming over him. That could potentially also affect how he's treating Wanda, where he sees her in some way intrinsically tied to this future where all of his friends are dead. And Justin, to your point, I think it is also like a very logical friend response to be like, no, I'm going to protect you by driving you away and get out of here and you leave me alone. And he just pushes and pushes and pushes until he kind of gets the self-fulfilling prophecy of, yep, everything is wreck and ruin. Rhodey is maybe dead and he is paralyzed from the waist down. He's caused it. It's fault. This thing that he thought was going to come to pass did come to pass, and ultimately he made it happen.
It's a classic Old Yeller situation. You get out of here, you dog, you dumb dog, throwing rocks at Old Yeller.
You're really, white fang. It's a white fanging. Yeah.
Is Captain America Old Yeller in that situation?
He's perhaps the oldest Yeller. He's so old, he's dating the next generation of his girlfriend in this movie.
Hey.
His
They
niece.
had one smoocheroo that both parties were all about.
Smoocheroo?
You know
What are
I mean?
you? What are you from the 40s?
Well, I'm trying to, relate to Cap's, what he's thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he really thinks she's the bee's knees, I would say.
I would say so.
He
I
waited
mean,
a long time.
he waited a long time.
Oh my God.
What do we think about this? Because we get the off-screen death of Peggy Carter in this movie, her funeral,
Bummer.
the reveal that Agent 13 is Sharon Carter, her niece, and then they have a schmoocheroo, as Pete said, by the end there.
Let's
How do you
not
feel
call it
about
that.
that?
Well, I mean, at the funeral, you got
little- how about
Sam.
that? Is that
Sam's
better?
like,
Kissy
nah,
kiss?
that's much
I don't know
worse
what's
when
happened
you
to you.
hear the noise.
Yeah, if you
at
look
the
at Rachel's
funeral-
face, that's all you need to know right there.
Yeah.
The fact
No.
that she's just like, I don't
She
know who
says
you
no.
are, dude, and you're creeping me out.
At Peggy's funeral, and Sam's like nudging Cap, like, "Hey, look, there's a potential girlfriend up there." I was like, "Yo, dude." First off, cool it at the funeral. Second off, this is a
You don't know
funeral
that's
for
what the nudge
his
is about.
girlfriend.
His nudge is kind of like, hey, we know her. It's kind of like, hey, it's that lady who used to live next to you. That's crazy.
I
Even
don't
still,
know.
it's like he's crying. He's
Yeah, it's
"I
not great."
can't." Peggy out. And he's sobbing, and Sam's like, "Hey,
Yeah,
who's that
hey,
blonde girl?"
yeah. But I think this is the Sharon Carter relationship in the comics is like it sort of works, but in the movies, this is one of those the few things that I was like, this doesn't work in this movie. They squeeze it in a bit. There's not a lot of time
Because
spent
they're
on
in
this
a
romance.
VW bug, and
Yeah.
it's very, very tight.
Yeah, and they
That's
make
exactly
out,
what
and
I
it cuts to Bucky and Sam just nodding at him, like
Just watching these guys.
I mean, that is one of the funnier moments in the movie.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yes, to your point, I don't know if they necessarily have chemistry
No.
per se. And Emily Van Camp is great and deserves way better, I think, overall than what she has been given by the MCU so far, including, not to jump there, but
I
Falcon
think-
and Winter Soldier. But go ahead.
Yeah.
I think she's coming back, and she's going to be a bigger part later. think she's
She's
coming
going to
back
be
around.
another power broker,
Yep.
a different
Well, I
power
would
broker.
love her to do that. There's a comic run for Bucky. I think it was Kyle Higgins did it. It's where he has Alpine and he goes and he finds there's a little Winter Soldier and he's like he basically adopts a son. And Sharon Carter is in there. Tony's in that one, but obviously it's fine. He's dead. Sorry. But what's it called? Sharon is in that briefly, and I was like, you guys can just do that storyline in the MC. I'd watch it. It's
Yeah.
not that long, and it's good, and also Sharon has things to do
Yeah.
instead
Nice.
of just everything else.
I do want to talk about my absolute favorite character in this movie, though, and one of the best villains in the MCU, Zemo, who gets
Yeah.
introduced here.
Yeah, he doesn't dance though in this though.
He
I kept
doesn't
waiting
dance
for
in this.
some like dance moments. You know
You're
what I
thinking
mean?
too far ahead. You're
I
thinking
know.
too far ahead, buddy.
That's
but
why it's when you're in the future and go back to watch it, you're putting stuff on stuff. You know.
for me, I like the stuff that happens before Zemo comes in, but once Zemo comes in, it gives such an interesting propulsiveness and a nervous energy to the entire movie. And one of the things that I think is the boldest thing that they do in this movie, and one of the reasons that I love Zemo, is by the end of the movie, he wins. Like, he is one of the few villains in
Yeah.
the MCU. Like,
take it
his
easy
goal
with
is to
wins.
destroy the Avengers, and he destroys the Avengers. Like, legitimately, he wins. He's expecting to kill himself at the end of the movie. He does not do that. Black Panther stops him, so we do get to see more
He
Zemo
catches a
in the MCU.
bullet.
Catches a bullet. But other than that, his plan completely works across the board to rip them apart. And it leads to the boldest sequence of the movie that I wanted to talk a little bit about the history here, which is they track him down to, it is Siberia, I think, right? Where
Yep.
there's other super soldiers from the Winter Soldier program. They think they're going to get attacked. They get there. Zemo has already killed them. And in fact, the plan was just to lure them there and show them this footage of Bucky killing Iron Man's parents, which is the ultimate moment that drives the Avengers apart and wrecks the alliance between Captain America and Iron Man. Now, the thing that I think is pretty interesting about this is the expected third act there of them all teaming up to fight Zemo and these super soldiers was something that apparently the Marvel Creative Committee at the time, and I don't know if you remember them, this was a bunch of comic book writers and execs over at Marvel Entertainment. They wanted that to happen. They were pushing pretty hard. They were saying, no, you have to have that. That's your third act there, is Captain America and Iron Man put their differences aside to fight the villains at the end. That's how these movies work. And it was such a big fight that apparently the Russos almost walked off of the movie. Kevin Feige almost was like, I will leave Marvel Studios if this happens. And that was the thing that pushed Disney to say, step in and say, no, we're going to go for this ending. They want to do this because this is going to shake up the superhero formula. It's going to go against what you expect is going to happen. And ultimately, though there's a little bit of like a dotted line here, whether this actually happened or not, pretty soon after that, the Marvel Creative Committee essentially got iced out of decisions, and Marvel Entertainment got pushed aside, and Kevin Feige got pushed up to be the guy.
It's its own civil war within the civil war.
Exactly.
Wow.
There you go.
Whoa.
Yeah, but that's when they changed the Marvel flip, Pete.
Yeah. So what side are you really on?
What side are you on?
God. Oh no.
I mean, that's sort of a joke, but it's also true that after this movie, the comic book people working on the movie were sort of shoved aside.
That's why the Marvel flip is movie. Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow. We cracked this for you, Pete.
Yeah. Wow.
But I do love that choice. Like, I think they were right. Kevin Feige and the Russos were right about this, because it's a much bolder choice to get to this thing where you expect it's going to be a huge superhero fight. And ultimately it becomes this very dark, very personal fight at the end of the movie. What did you guys think about this when you watched it or when you rewatched it recently?
It was hard. It's hard both times to watch. It was like watching your parents fight. Like seeing Tony Stark and Captain America go at it, and especially after like Tony's helmet came off and Cap's still, like pushing that shield into his chest. I was just kind of like both times being like, stop, stop,
please stop.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is hard to watch, and it's especially hard because they do a great job of making it really be off the rails. Like at this point in the movie with the reveal, you're like, someone could die here. This could really go. And I think that's much more satisfying. Not to also agree with the movie people over the comic book people.
Yeah.
But it's so much more satisfying to have it be that way than them just being like, you know what? We are friends, and just having a pretty normal fight.
But it's one of those things where it's like the comic book creative team helped put Marvel Cinematic where it is. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like a crazy, I'm assuming an insane fight to kind of, they're trying to stay true to what they know as the comics, but the characters are evolving in the movie in a different way here. So it's hard because having the different ending would be insane and would be very much like the heroes that we know from the comics. But I feel like because they're doing something different here, that it was the right choice with what they did in the movie. But it's kind of insane that this caused such drama.
No, I'm sorry, Pete. You need to choose a side, and whichever side you choose, you can't consume any of the content from the other side ever again. So choose comics or movies, comics, and dude, never the twain shall meet.
Yeah, that's what got me here. I guess I got to.
Right. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. You can sign off now.
And Pete, I'll call you after Wakanda Forever, but you can't see it because you chose comics. So see you later.
Don't you try to take that away from me.
You can't
wait. I'm gonna cry my way through all 2 hours and change of that movie, and I cannot wait.
You're going to start crying at the Marvel flip, and then that's when we'll see you later.
Well, why don't we talk about other moments from the movie? There's obviously a lot of different things that we've skipped by here as we've been chatting about different aspects. What other scenes jumped out to you on this rewatch? Yes, Pete, thanks for raising your hand.
All right, might as well get this out of the way while we're piling in on me. I mean, we have this amazing Cadillac here that we see in the beginning that is cut to numerous times. And each time, I'm sure you guys are thinking about who's driving it or what's going on, but I'm watching it going, how many times do I have to watch this amazing mint condition Cadillac total and then get destroyed? I mean, it's just absolutely heartbreaking.
Great. That was the one thing you wanted to mention, Pete? All right,
Yeah,
let's
that's
go to
one thing
Rachel
about
then.
You don't need to
for
raise your
something
hand,
not
but thank you
insane.
for-
I was just establishing the pattern.
No,
Yes.
you're good. And thank
Uh,
you for pausing because we'll just cut out what Pete just said. So
Yeah.
he has to drop you right.
Not to go back, but like I really like how the two big Zemo fights, because I like that first one where he activates the Winter Soldier, and it is essentially just so that Chris Evans can flex while pulling down a helicopter to stop.
Oh
When he
yeah, the
switches his
flexible.
grip.
when
Yeah,
he's like this, and he switches.
He
Oh my
switches the
God.
grip.
Wait, can I mention
This-
two quick facts about that before we get off of the
About Chris Evans's biceps. Sure,
Yes.
go ahead.
You have
Absolutely.
two facts about
Two
this
facts.
one
Buys and
One
tries.
fact
You want
is
to talk about buys
apparently-
and then tries?
No, just the buys, just the buys. I have bi facts about biceps. The Tom Hiddleston apparently, when asked what his favorite moment is in the MCU, said it's that moment, not anything
Great.
from Loki or any of the movies he's in. And the other one,
Hilarious.
apparently, Chris Evans wears T-shirts a few sizes too small to emphasize his muscles.
Just
It's
like
a sh-
Joss.
it's a
Who does that?
Just like JT Sizzle.
I don't have the muscles to match that, but I'll
And-
still wear a
That's
tiny
what a
tee.
He
schmedium
loves
is.
a tiny
A
T.
schmedium? A schmedium?
Yeah, that's the
I
whole
love that.
thing. Is they're called schmediums, and it's how like all of these big buff guys wear shirts that are just slightly too small. So then it's like, look how big my arms are.
Oh my God, I
Granted,
love that.
I am
Genius.
probably the size of his arm as a human, but I'm just saying. like,
And the other thing that I'll mention just off of that is they film, apparently, whenever he does a Captain America anything, they film all the T-shirt scenes towards the beginning because he's working so long, he starts to lose mass over the course of the shoot. So if they want to do those really good Ripley bicep T-shirt scenes, that's in the first part of the shoot.
So you just want to interrupt the podcast to talk about T-shirts, mostly T-shirts,
T-shirts.
basically.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I
think
love
it's
that
worth it.
fact. The idea that they have to shoot the muscle scenes first is like it's sort of embarrassing for him to be like, all right, crew of hundreds, I'm here to look a little more jacked in this scene.
Well, I mean, you know how it is. You're a line producer. The food and the catering on those movie sets are unbelievable. How are you supposed to stay in shape when they've got
I
all
don't think
that?
it's about him eating too much. I think it's about the fact that he's
No.
working really hard for hours
and
a
he
day. he's
can't work out as much as he did
Exactly.
in the beginning half of it.
Nope,
Right.
he's guzzling Reese's Pieces at craft services like a maniac.
Yeah.
But I do like how that fight is everyone basically against Bucky, like not Bucky's fault, but it's everyone trying to stop Bucky. And then by the end, it is actually Cap and Bucky working in tandem to stop Iron Man from
Yeah.
essentially doing what Bucky was doing and going too far because he was out of control. And I like that setup, and they're both Zemo's fault, but I do like how that works in the film. And I also, there is a line in this movie that I think about all the time, and it's when Zemo talks about Captain America's eyes at the end of this movie,
Mm.
and he is just like, "There's a little green in your eyes," and I was just like, "Okay, who wrote this?" Like Martin and McFeely and Marcus were sitting somewhere, and they were like, "There's some green." There's some green in his eyes. Put that in there. Like who came up with that line?
I do
is
love
all I
that
wanna
though.
know.
Like it's just such a subtle thing in the way that Daniel Bruhl delivers it in terms of being like the green in your eyes, and he's pointing it out because it's like there's a flaw. You have a flaw. You are not the perfect person, and I am exploiting your flaw right now, which is not just the green in your eyes. It's Bucky. It's your relationship with Iron Man. It's all this stuff. But yeah, that definitely feels like the sort of thing that they talked about in conversations, staring into his eyes at some point.
yeah,
But
like that's what's funny about it is it's like there's so many little things in this movie that you're like, who had that conversation?
Yeah.
Oh, who talked about
They
that?
actually,
sort of
real
like-
quick fun fact, they shoot all of Chris Evans' eye scenes
I-
towards
yeah.
the beginning because he starts to lose eye
Because your eyes
mass.
change color as the movie, you know, as you're
100%.
training.
All those, all that chocolate. No, I think it was somebody got busted staring at Chris Evans' eyes, and they're like, "Hey, we got to write it in the movie so it counts as research. I don't want to get caught
those-
up."
That's America's eyes right there. I think though that one thing you brought up is that the fight sequence where Bucky is escaping and everybody kind of tries to stop him. Just really cool to see. Like you know, there is first off amazing Black Panther stuff with him where he doesn't, you see like Tony's used as part of his kind of hand blaster and stuff like that. But like the fact that we see Sharon Carter and Natasha with nothing, being, just running into, it's this thing of kind of like heroes running into a fire when everybody else is running out. And it's just some really just kind of like, oh my God, moments where they're, kind of throwing caution in the wind and jumping in to help. And it's just the tension of that fight scene always gets me every time I see it, and it's just so enjoyable.
Yeah. Any other moments anybody wants to call out from here?
Well, we haven't talked about Nat, and this is a great Black Widow movie as well. I think her scenes at the top of this movie are the way it's sort of like shaky cam on her. Like she gets such great fight moments. She gets to be, at the end of the day, sort of the adult in the room who's like, hey, I'm going to be on this side, but I still love you over there. And then later she's like, okay, it feels like we've overstepped with this multi-million-dollar airplane fight that ruined everything. Why don't you guys go solve this? I'm going to trust my gut here. And I miss her as a stabilizing force in the MCU in general, and I don't know who's going to be that going forward.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see her in action.
Yeah, and also like there's that moment where Cap gets the text and just leaves, which I like for Cap because he's like, this is a huge moment for superheroes everywhere. But once he gets the text about Peggy, he's out because that's his true love. And so the fact that like Nat goes all the way out there to visit him, basically to give him a hug and say like, I didn't want you to be alone, is just awesome. Just such a cool friend thing that was just such I thought like such a cool choice along the lines of what Justin was saying. It was nice to see Nat be such a cool human being at that point.
Yeah, I relate the most to Nat because I was like, I went back and forth on what side, and like she does it because she's like, no, I love all these people. They're all my friends. I understand why you think this, but I also understand why you think this. And I like this movie a lot because obviously it leads into Black Widow, which my other favorite character is Yelena. So I love Black Widow, and I do think Yelena is going to end up being the Nat in the future, just because it's built into them as Black Widows, and she's already kind of filling that void in her own way. But I really like how this movie kind of sets up why I don't understand why we got Black Widow when we got Black Widow. It should have been after this movie or before it, but I do like that this movie sets up a perfect reason for Nat to not be with the Avengers or with Cap or with anybody in between this and Infinity War, so that when we do have Black Widow, it fits in perfectly. I always think she deserved more than she got in the MCU because like she's great and she was the only woman for a really long time, and it took so long for her to get a movie that movie is really good, but it also hurts because you're like, well, wish this was like 2010 because that would have been really cool.
I mean, in terms of, I always tend to rewatch these movies in release order, but I do think, to the point that you're making, Black Widow is one that you can definitely watch. What?
No, you just had a comic book nerd moment there. I just wanted.
There's a lot of people talk about whether you should watch it.
I only watch the movies in chronological order.
Listen, that was a beautiful impersonation of me, and that sounded exactly like me. So thank you, Pete. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I wasn't trying to be you. I was,
no, you were doing a great job. That sounded exactly like my voice. Okay. People are going to be very confused.
If you want to make it about you, that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm always saying "Flame Lave" and everything. Anyway, my point being exactly like you're saying, Rachel. I think watching Black Widow after you watch this movie is a smart choice because it rolls right out of it. And like you're saying, I think it is a good, fun action movie that years later felt like, wait, I don't know why this is coming here. But if you're going to watch this before Infinity War, before Endgame, because of all the other movies there, I think it would work better in that placement.
Mm-hmm.
We should mention the two end credit sequences. Were you going to mention that, Pete?
Well, I was going to get to it. There's stuff that we didn't talk about that I wanted to talk about. We had mentioned
Oh, really?
briefly
More than the sweet Cadillac at the beginning?
well, I had to get that out of the way first.
Oh,
you know,
sure. Okay.
Cadillac does. But so we had this amazing kind of car running chase sequence that was really fun because there was a lot of fun leapfrogging where like Black Panther was chasing but jumped on the back of the car of Captain America because he knew Captain America was going. There was this really fantastic of outdoing each other to kind of get to that moment, and then Captain America just like running out of a moving car was just so badass and amazing. And then also Bucky, just like I think the coolest way I've ever seen someone get on a motorcycle. That was just some phenomenal action sequences, and then the fact that it had to all stop and everybody just kind of had to like was just such a crazy way for that to end, and I did not see coming the first time I saw it.
Pete, have you ever seen me get on a motorcycle?
No, I haven't. I assumed with your half
good of
shirts
me.
that you couldn't do it. It wouldn't be.
Here's the thing about that motorcycle sequence, hot, but also keep thinking it's way more in slow motion than it is. And every time I watch this movie, I'm like, I feel like it was a lot slower. Like it keeps getting faster to me the more I watch it. And I'm like, I feel like we spent way more time with this before. But yeah, I love that whole sequence because it starts with Cap and Bucky in the apartment in Bucharest, and Bucky he's like, we don't kill anybody, and Bucky just like smashes some guy's head into a wall 2 seconds after he said it, and like you can just see Cap be like, come on, man. And like the two of them like trying, like it's such a weird dynamic, but it works within the fight because it's like Bucky being like, leave me alone, dude. And Steve's like, nope. And then everyone else is trying to stop the two of them. It's great. I love that fight a lot. But yeah, that motorcycle I think about often.
Yeah, and then so we have the kind of big explosion where Chadwick Boseman loses his father, and the like him talking about how death is not the end was kind of a real healing moment for me to kind of hear him talk about that. So that was kind of like a nice rewatch moment to kind of hear him talk about death a little bit. I just every time Chadwick Boseman was on screen, it was just so very moving. Oh yeah, and the whole like I didn't catch it the first time I watched it, but the second time around when Tony Stark is talking to Captain America and he's trying to get him to sign, he's got the old pens and the whole thing. What?
When he flirts with him?
Oh, I didn't.
They flirt in that scene a lot.
Oh, interesting. Oh, great. That's fun. But I also thought it was interesting that Cap was like, Tony Stark was jumping on Cap for a bunch of things, and then Cap was like, oh yeah, I didn't see Pepper here. And I was like, oh shit. The second time around I caught it, but the first time I did not. And I thought that was a very interesting where Tony was talking about being right all the time. And, even in the movie, he admits that he goes too far and it was a little too much for Pepper. So it was kind of a nice rewatch moment for me there.
Yeah, and it's also just a nice way to work around the fact that Gwyneth Paltrow couldn't do the movie, so they
she wouldn't have known if she was in it anyway.
Exactly.
That's true.
That's right.
That's true.
She wouldn't have known. This movie though, like going off your zinger thing, it has so many good like little zingers in it that like it is one of those that I think people quote more often than they realize. I did also want to talk about I remember when this movie came out and people were talking about how bad the like CGI in the beginning with the BARF program was. And I am a big Robert Downey Jr. fan. And I was like, oh, no. That's just what he looked like. That is just like how smooth
he did look
his
good.
skin was
Oh, yeah.
when he was that young. Like that is just Robert Downey Jr. He looks like less than zero Robert Downey Jr. in that scene. And I like remember flipping out about that and being like, oh my God, that looks just like him.
I thought I was watching an 80s movie for a moment. The Mr. Softy t-shirt and everything. It was really...
It definitely, we've seen a lot worse over the past couple of years. And in retrospect, watching it again earlier today for the podcast, to your point, I was like, oh, actually, this
pretty
is fine.
good.
Pretty
good.
It's like Robert Downey Jr.
There you go. A couple of other quick things that I'll mention.
Post
If
credits.
Robert Downey Jr. hadn't worked out, apparently they were going to adapt the Mad Bomb storyline from the comics, where Zemo would release a bomb that would drive everybody, including heroes, insane, so they could still get the Civil War aspect. Obviously, it did work out, and that changed the movie a lot. Also, you probably knew this one, but a nice little Easter egg there from the Russo's time directing on Arrested Development. If you look closely in the airport fight, the staircase car from Arrested
Yeah,
Development
staircase
with
car.
company is
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
so that's very fun as well. And real quick, the two end credit sequences, which have been kind of followed up on in different aspects. We have the one where Bucky ends up in
Yeah.
Wakanda, that tees up Black Panther, that tees up him later in Infinity War. And then we get the one with Spider-Man in bed where he gets the spider signal, which is very cute, but not really followed up on necessarily.
No.
I don't
But
know.
cute.
Well, no, it wasn't. I didn't think it was the spider signal. I thought it was just him realizing that, because he uses that in Homecoming. So I thought it was just
okay.
teasing that the next movie was Spider-Man Homecoming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
that's fair.
remember what we knew at the time, but
Yeah.
I think it was just like he still has his suit in Homecoming.
Yeah,
Um,
if anything, I think it was
even though
probably to
it,
tee up.
crosses over.
Right after that, the will return at the end of the movie is Spider-Man will
Yeah.
return. So probably
Yeah.
like you're saying, Rachel, it was to assure audiences this isn't stopping here. Spider-Man's in the
He's
MCU
coming.
now. Let's
He's
go.
coming back.
He's coming. Before we wrap up here, though, why don't we go to our vision board? This is a section where we talk about things that are coming up
vision.
in the
Get it?
MCU. This is a tricky one to do because most of the stuff has been followed up on. So I guess we could talk about Captain America stuff in general. We also don't know necessarily what's going to happen with Bucky going forward. Maybe he'll show up in Captain America New World Order, maybe not. Rachel,
He's
you seem
in-
like you know something.
Yeah, he's in Thunderbolts.
Oh, that's right. He's in Thunderbolts. I did forget about that. Well, what are you
Nice,
looking forward to
Rachel,
then,
nice.
coming off of these characters in the MCU going forward? What's the thing you're most excited to see?
I want to say I like the tone of this movie. I think is so good, like in the balance, and that's what I want to see more of. I feel like some of the movies and projects, and especially TV, feels like they haven't quite nailed the balance of being fun and the characters dealing with stuff, but also still retaining their sort of shine. And I'd like to see more of that going forward.
Uh,
Pete?
I'm looking forward to them kind of retconning where they left the last Spider-Man movie, which I didn't like, is Peter Parker walking away from MJ at the end and leaving her kind of in the dark, which I felt like is complete
Okay, so
bullshit.
your thing for future off of Captain America Civil War is something
That's
that
right.
happened like 25 movies
Well, we're
ago.
talking about things that are happening in the future, and we're talking about Spider-Man.
Okay.
And, at the end of the last credit sequence, they said Spider-Man will return. So my vision is maybe that we
It
get to
is
see
his
a little
vision,
bit more
Alex.
Spider-Man.
All right, sorry.
And Spider-Man is going to realize, oh, what am I doing? I can't leave MJ in the dark. I need to go and fix that and let her know all that's happened, because that's a very nice thing to do for someone you care about.
That would be a very nice thing to do. Rachel, what are you looking forward to in Captain America, for Thunderbolts, anything like that?
Well, briefly going off Pete's, I do hope that Daredevil is part of that adventure, because that is what I'm most excited about, is the potential of a Spider-Man Daredevil
Yeah.
little
Cool.
adventure. But I'm very excited about Thunderbolts. I'm really excited about Harrison Ford being in the MCU. I know people are not, but I love Harrison Ford. I've seen every movie that man has done, so I'm really into that. I'm excited for Bucky and Yelena to meet. I think that's going to be a really fun dynamic.
Ooh, yeah.
Because they haven't met yet. And Bucky in the comics had a thing with Nat. But
Yeah,
they didn't.
great
That
story.
didn't happen in this, and so Yelena is kind of on her own. I don't know that I want that to happen, but I do think it'd be interesting. And I am really excited about New World Order, because I was one of the cheerleaders for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I knew what kind of storyline they were doing. I knew why Sam wasn't as on focused. Because I know like a lot of commentary was about how Sam wasn't the focus, and I was like, because they're waiting to reveal him as Captain America, he's taking the shield. Like, it makes sense, but I didn't particularly love it. I wanted Sam to be Captain America. And so I'm really excited to actually get to explore that in a movie, because I think that'd be fun. And also, like, if old man Steve shows up so people will stop asking Chris Evans questions, that'd be fine. Old man Steve Rock, Joe Biden rolling up.
I think those would all be great. The only other one that I'll throw out there is I would love to see Bucky in Captain America 4, just because watching this movie reminded me how good Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie are together. They're just so much fun. Oh, scary little child in the basement. Terrifying. And so
How
that would
dare
be,
you call Justin's kids terrifying?
I mean, it's dark in the background there, and a child creeped out and was like, hello.
It was like a horror movie. I was
That's
terrified.
I was not. I was like, look at that little adorable kid who's lost and doesn't have somebody looking out for them.
It was just the like all of a sudden disembodied daddy in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm looking for more of that in the MCU. That's what I want to see in Captain America 4. Scary little children coming out everywhere.
No.
Yes.
That was in Multiverse of Madness.
Oh,
You got
right,
it.
right.
Yes.
Okay,
we got plenty of that.
Before we wrap up here, Rachel, what do you want to plug? Where should people check you out?
Yeah.
You can follow my work at the Mary Sue. I also do a little bit for other websites like Collider and whatnot. I also have a podcast called Pedro Pascal, where we go through the filmography of actor Pedro Pascal. So
Nice.
Awesome.
Beginning of 2023, about to be very busy.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can see all my horrible superhero takes that I yell online a lot.
Good for you.
On my Twitter for as long as that
Yay,
lasts.
yelling.
But yeah.
Woohoo.
Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. And for anybody out there, if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/comic book club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast on YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about the MCU. Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow the show at Marvel Vision Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, stay marvelous.
Tony Stank. There's a package for Tony Stank.